Hi, it's Kristen, and we're doing another book haul, but these are all borrowed books. I bought one of these. So I was trying to build up a spooky TBR for myself for the autumn months, and I realised I don't really have anything on my shelf, so I went to the library. Got myself a few things, and I wanted to share them with you. Possibly too many things. First of all, though, I will go through books that were lent to me. So most of these are library books. A couple of them were lent to me. One book I did buy myself purely because I have a book club and I could not find this book anywhere. I looked in multiple libraries. No one had it for me to borrow. It was kind of difficult to get a hold of, so I just had to order it for myself. And that is the one book I bought this month, and that is The Mental Load by Emma. This is a feminist comic, so it's just made up of comic strips dealing with different feminist topics. Talks a lot about the emotional and like organizational mental loads that women take on, and that minorities take on more so than men. So it talks about stuff like the male gaze and different types of oppression and stuff like that. I think it'll be really interesting, and I think this is a nice one to do for my book club, because sometimes we all struggle to finish books on time, whereas this is just made up of comic strips, so should theoretically be quick to read. So that was the one book I bought for myself. Everything else is borrowed, I promised you. So I went into work one day, and my really lovely colleague, who I get along very well with, said that he assumed this about me but wasn't sure and wanted to check if I liked reading. And I said, well, yes, I do. Yes, I do. And we have quite a lot in common, and he recently read this book and he said he thought it sounded like something I would be interested in, and so he lent me his copy. He and I treat our books very differently because this is quite a beat up copy, but this is Natives, Race and Class in the Ruins of Empire by Akala. And so he said it's just it's non-fiction. It's by this author who his dad is black and his mum's white, and it's about his experiences personally and then like historically within Britain, of like police identity, expression, and how race and class have shaped his life, but also looking at like the wider contexts of race and class, and how it affects people generally. This I'm really looking forward to, because I feel like lots of books about race that get popular are often about America, which is interesting to read, but this, I'm very glad, deals specifically with like Britain. Obviously I am British, so I feel like examining Britain's history of racism and class discrimination, I can relate to and apply to my own life, more so than I can with books about the same issues in America. Obviously I think we should all be wide read about many different countries, and I'd read things about racism and class in other countries. I think that would be very interesting, but I do appreciate looks on British history, and obviously Britain has a terrible history with colonialism and discrimination and empire. So I think this will be a really interesting one to read. So I'm very glad that my colleague suggested it. I feel like I need to find a book on my shelf that I can lend to him, or at least recommend to him. So yes, we have this one. Then my sister lent me 2 books at my request. She is much more of a spooky gal than I am typically. So she has more like horror books on her shelf, and I asked if I could borrow a couple to sort of bulk out my reading and maybe fulfill a couple of readathons that I want to get to. So she lent me, first of all, Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khor. This one is very short, which is mainly why I wanted it. I've heard very mixed things about this. People either seem to love it or hate it. It's about a woman who gets together with some old, I think like college friends, because there's a wedding, and so they all go to this wedding destination, but it's haunted. And that's pretty much all I know, and that's all I want to know going in. But this cover is creepy as fuck. So yeah, I'm excited to get to this one, see what I think about it. It's very short, so even if I don't like it, it's one of those books that I don't feel like I'll have wasted my time reading, you know. So we've got that, and then she also lent me Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which has been a thing for ages, and I've known about for years, and I've always thought I should read that, and then I just never have. So I thought, let's get to it finally. This one's a bit chunkier. However, I feel like I can read it quite fast. I'm a huge fan of Pride and Prejudice, of Jane Austen in general. Love Pride and Prejudice, love the story. I wonder what it's going to be like with zombies in it. It's just the story of Pride and Prejudice, but with zombies in it, as far as I'm aware. I know that there's a movie that came out a few years ago with like Lily James in it, and so I wouldn't mind also watching that at some point. But yes, very excited to get to this one. So those are the ones that I borrowed from family and friends. And now we have all the ones I got from the library. So yeah, I went in search of spooky books. I had some like written on a list, did not find any of the ones I had written down, but found a few other things. So first of all, the first book I saw was Daphne du Maurier's The Birds and Other Stories. So this is just a collection of short stories written by Daphne du Maurier. Now, I'd always heard of The Birds as like the Alfred Hitchcock film. Didn't realise it was based on a short story. Did not realise that Daphne du Maurier wrote that short story. I love Daphne du Maurier. I read Rebecca a year or 2 ago. No, more than that. Pre-pandemic. So, longer ago than I think. I loved Rebecca. I loved like the atmospheric, creepy writing. So a book of like creepy short stories sounds perfect to me. I thought this would be a great one because it's one I can dip in and out of, read a short story here and there throughout the month. Excited to get to this. And then another one I found, a collection of short stories. We have 8 Ghosts. We have books by stories by Mark Haddon, Jeanette Winterson, Andrew Michael Hurley, Sarah Perry, Stuart Evers, Kate Clancy, Camilla Shamsi, and Max Porter. Some of those authors I recognise their names, some I don't. I've definitely read something by Max Porter before. But this is 8 authors were given the freedom of their chosen English heritage site, from medieval castles to a Cold War nuclear bunker, and they got to write ghost stories about those locations. And I just thought that sounded really cool. And again, this is one I can read throughout the month. Story here and there. But I just thought that sounded really interesting. Short stories are a bit hit and miss for me, but I feel like creepy short stories are perhaps my way to go rather than contemporary short stories, which is mostly what I've read. Next up, we have The Dry by Jane Harper. This is about a man, a policeman, Aaron Falk, who returns to his hometown for the funeral of a childhood best friend, and he's drawn into an investigation about these murders that are going on Yeah, I feel like small town community murder investigation is very my kind of thing. And this one's set in Australia during the worst drought in a century. So that sounds like a very interesting setting as well. I've not read many books set in Australia, so I think this will be an interesting read. But I've just heard such good things about this. Yeah, very excited to get to this. Then we have one that I was just drawn to by the title, and then I thought the cover was cool. And it's Devotion by Madeline Stevens. So this is about Ella, who is 26, lonely, hungry, and broke, and Lonnie, also 26, rich, talented, and beautiful, with a doting husband and a son to match. And Lonnie hires Ella as her nanny, but then seemingly boundaries between them are pushed, and it's the question of, is this friendship? Is this more than friendship? Is this slightly obsession? And then does that obsession grow into like resentment? And I just thought this sounded really interesting. I love stories about like messed up female relationships. And yeah, so I'm excited to pick this one up. Then we're going for something a little bit different, but one of the prompts for one of the readathons I'm doing is a translated book, and I saw Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. I probably butchered that name, I apologise. This is about Kiko. She's 36, never had a boyfriend, been working in the same convenience store for 18 years. Everyone thinks that she sort of needs to like go out and get a life, but she's very content with how things are, so she doesn't really see the need to. And this is very short, and I've heard good things, and I'm sort of wondering if that's it to the plot, or if there's more to the plot. It's always sort of intrigued me, so I thought, it's so short, I'll give it a go. I think it'll be interesting. Then we have one. I head over to the other side of the library, to the YA section. I don't really read much YA anymore, but every now and then a book intrigues me. And I saw this one, which is The Deathless Girls by Kieran Millward Hargrave. This cover is beautiful. I heard Kieran Millward Hargrave speak on a podcast like a while ago about this book, and I thought it sounded very intriguing. So it's about some sisters who are captured by the cruel Boya Valkar and forced to work as slaves. But when the sisters hear of the mythical dragon, more monster than man, who accepts girls as gifts, their desperate existence is threatened once more. In this brutal world of dark desire and destiny, the girls must fight to save their own flesh and blood, even if that means accepting a fate beyond death. So this is, I believe, like a retelling sort of origin story of the Brides of Dracula. So I thought that sounded very cool and very like perfect for this time of year. So this is one I'm very interested in getting to. And then the last one I got from that library, we have The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This one I don't know a ton about. I just simply read the synopsis and thought it sounded intriguing, but as I read the synopsis, it sounded familiar, so I feel like maybe I've heard someone on BookTube talk about it before. Essentially, it says, eccentric genius Adam Bosk has cracked the multiverse and discovered a way to travel parallel Earths. There's one problem: no one can visit a world where their counterpart is still alive. Enter Kara. Of the 382 realities that have been unlocked, Kara is dead in all but 8. Born in the Wastelands, Kara has fought her entire life just to survive, so when she's offered a job travelling the multiverse and a safe place to call home, she's willing to do anything to keep it that way. But then one of the doppelgangers dies under mysterious circumstances, and Kara is plunged into a new world with an old secret. What she discovers there will reveal her own role in a plot that endangers not just her Earth, but the entire multiverse. That sounds very intriguing to me. Again, I love sci-fi, watching sci-fi stuff, reading sci-fi stuff, but I don't have a ton of sci-fi, so I wanted to pick up some sci-fi, and I did. But yeah, so like multiverses, different realities, travel, very fun, and also a little bit of murder in there. Intriguing. So yeah, very interested. Again, I'm interested in all of these. And then I went to a different library just to see if they had some of the other things on my list. They did not, but I found some other things that I was interested in. First up, we have Mrs. Death, Mrs. Death by Selena Godin. I have heard multiple people talk about this. I think Books and Lala was the first person I heard talk about it. And it just sounded great. Can I tell you what it's about? No. I will read the synopsis to you. Mrs. Death has had enough. She's exhausted by her job and now seeks someone to unburden her conscience to. She meets Wolf, a troubled young writer who, enthralled by her stories, begins to write Mrs. Death's memoirs. As the two reflect on the losses they've experienced, their friendship flourishes. All the while, despite her world weariness, Death must continue to hold human fates in her hands, appearing in our lives when we least expect her. Not a whole lot of plot given there, but just the idea of like a death narrator is really cool. The Book Thief has Death as a narrator, and I loved that concept and the way it was done, so I'm intrigued to get to this one, and I think this will have really beautiful conversations about death and grief perhaps, and you know, life and its meaning, and I just think this could be a really profound book to read, so I picked that up. Then I went to the YA section just to see what they had again, and found this book, which I've never heard of before. It's by Tom Levine, and it's called Sick. This is about a boy who goes to high school, and then people start getting sick, and that he and his friends end up trapped there while, I'm assuming, like zombies start coming closer. I did have a flick through it, and I noticed that on like each title page, so it has like the time and the date, and then it has like a little zombie down here, and then the further you get into the book, the more zombies there are coming in, and I thought that was really cool. I love zombie fiction, so I thought I'd pick this up. And then lastly, not a spooky book, not sci-fi, not fantasy, not anything like that. It was in the non-fiction section, which was right next to the YA section, and it caught my eye, and I'd heard of it, and I remembered putting it on like my Goodreads want to read list, so I picked it up. It's about bloody time, period, by Emma Barnett. This is just a non-fiction book about menstruation. That's pretty much it. And like trying to break down the taboos surrounding periods and things like that. And I thought it would be fun to read. People say it's quite funny, so I'm interested to read it and see what I think. So yes, that is everything. It's a lot of books. So 3 borrowed from friends, family, 1 bought, and then 10 from the library. Will I get to all these in the next couple of months? Probably not. But we'll try. We'll try. Anyway, that is it for this borrowed book haul, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye.